So today's talk is going to be on the art of disappearing, Fieldcraft for bird photographers. Basically, I want to get a little more in depth than don't scare the birds, right? Because that's would sort of be a very simple talk. All right, so our agenda is going to be, we'll talk a little bit about me. We'll cover some importance of Fieldcraft and how to use it to your advantage to get better photos. So about me, I've had the slides in every talk I've done. My boys are much bigger than that now. But married to my college sweetheart. We've been together since 1993. I've got 2 teenage boys. That's them, but they're much bigger now. And that's my best friend there, Luna. So my dad was a birder. I kind of exist because of birds. My father's best friend was a birder. Took him birding. He introduced, my father's friend introduced him to my uncle, who introduced him to my mother, and so I sort of exist because of birds. Been birding my whole life. Been all around the world birding. I lead workshops throughout the country. Next year, I'm also running one in Canada, in Newfoundland. I do lots of online coaching, helping people with all sorts of techniques and Photoshop and Lightroom and all of that sort of stuff. What do I use? A1 II, A1, I've got some of that stuff sitting here. 600, the 300, 70-200 I hardly use once in a while. 24 to 70 I actually use fair amounts on some of these pictures I'm going to show you. Just mentioning as an aside that I'm not showing a sort of a portfolio of all of my images or anything like that. This is just a small selection of photos taken on 3 different workshops that I ran this year, and just using those photos to sort of prove some points and show some illustrations of what I did and why I did it and how it can help. So we're going to go over 7 steps to success. Learn your subjects, equipment preparation, knowing your locations, blending in, working the light, using natural or man-made cover, and being patient. So step 1, learn the birds. Now, this is any bird photography talk I've ever done, I start with learning the birds. It's vital. There's lots of birds, hundreds, 700 and something kind of birds in the US. There are birds that are super easy to photograph and birds that are super difficult. If you want to have a really diverse portfolio, well, you need to know a lot about all of them. So studying things like their behavior, their calls, their seasonal patterns can help you predict where and when to photograph them. So let's go over some points that'll help you, right? Research bird species that are common to your area or a trip location. The more you know about a bird, right, the more it's going to help you in the field. If you know how they behave, if you know how close you can get, if you know sort of their patterns of behavior, you can position yourself in a place to not scare them, right? So, like I said, Fieldcraft is about a lot more than just not scaring the birds. It's about how we position ourselves, why we positioned ourselves in a certain location, what information we used before we positioned ourselves there. So things like understanding daily activities. Do they feed in a certain place? Do they roost in a certain place? Do they eat certain kinds of food? In which case you want to be, we were just talking about ospreys that are eating certain fish at certain times of the year or whatever it happens to be. The more you know about that, the better you can position yourself to get a photo. Knowing bird sounds, it's vital. If it's an osprey, maybe you don't need to know a sound, but if you're looking to photograph warblers or you're looking to photograph certain sparrows in fields or whatever it is, where there might be 20, 30 things calling, the ability to hone in on the one you want to photograph is super important. There are apps that'll tell you what birds are around, but it doesn't tell you which one of the 20 that are singing. Knowing that, of course, is what's going to help a great deal. Knowing things about migration and seasonal patterns can all help you be in a better position. So the point of this talk is about Fieldcraft. All this knowledge will tell you where to be, when to be there, why to be there, where you're going to position yourself in the field, which is, of course, is going to lead to a better photo, right? And I just wanted to say one other thing. I'm going to go through a bunch of things and then get to photos, okay? And explain sort of all of these things we went over and how I use them as an advantage. So step 2 is equipment preparation. I've made every mistake in the book 50 times, right? I'm sure I'll be some more I'll eventually invent to make. And I lead workshops, and so I try and help people avoid some of the mistakes that I've made. And one of them is really just making sure your equipment is where it needs to be, right? That you have with you what you need in the field, making sure your camera's working properly, making sure you have batteries in it, right? I just was in Newfoundland, and I was leading a trip with a few people, and I was really busy and not thinking, and I didn't think to check my battery in between sessions. And, well, halfway through one of the sessions, my battery died, right? Thankfully, I had an extra battery sitting in my pocket. If you had to crawl 50 feet through the mud to get in position to get some photo, and all of a sudden you run out of a battery, and you got to get up, you're done, right? So, again, Fieldcraft is about a lot more than just how you approach the birds or how you don't scare them. It's about being prepared with the stuff you need, like batteries, like memory cards, like a ground pod or a monopod, something sturdy, something so you're not moving if you're holding a camera. I mean, there's only so long I can hold one of these without shaking some or without having to put it down because I'm tired or something like that. So if you can be very quiet and still and have a ground pod or a monopod or something like that, it can help you not scare the birds, right? And things like operating the camera should be second nature, right? You don't need to think. If you're looking at the back of the camera, you could be missing what's happening. If you're moving unnecessarily, you can be scaring birds, right? So knowing everything about the camera, you can operate it with your eyes closed, having it set up properly to do all the things that you want to do with it. You wouldn't think as Fieldcraft, but it is, because if you're wasting time doing something else, you're not watching what's happening in front of you. Or you couldn't be moving unnecessarily and scaring the birds, right? So familiarizing your things with things like the camera settings, the controls, how to change everything that you want to change. You know, all these new modern cameras, you can personalize every button every way you want. However you want it, you need to be able to use it and not wasting any time looking at the camera, looking at a menu, and not looking at the birds, right? Because then you could be missing takeoffs, landings, feedings. You can be scaring them. You know, if you've got to move it away, oh, what am I doing here? You're not watching what's happening over there. And things like weatherproof. You know, bring a weatherproof cover. I sell them here, that's for sure. You know, put them in your pocket. Just when I was in Newfoundland, we were on these cliffs photographing puffins. I'm going to show some of those. And it started pouring rain, and I mean pouring rain. You know, I just, in the back of my bag, which is sitting over there, just pulled out the lens coat cover, put it on. I didn't care, it was good as new. I didn't have to leave, I didn't have to go back to the car, and I could actually photograph stuff in the rain as well and not worrying about, you know, $20,000 worth of gear getting soaked. So step 3, knowing your location. Understand the landscape, the bird habits, the local conditions, so you can anticipate where birds will be and approach them without disturbance. So again, Fieldcraft is about a lot more than just don't scare the birds. Knowing the location is vital. Oh, I could just say, could I see you're taking a bunch of pictures? This is all going on YouTube, and so you will have access. Of course, feel free to take pictures, but it all will eventually be online, and you know, so B&H will put it out. But you're not disturbing me by taking pictures, so don't worry. But the more you know about a location, right? If it's a tidal location, if you know what happens at low tide and high tide, and when the tide's coming in or when the tide's going out. If it's the woods, if you know what happens in the morning or the evening, or whatever it is that you're going to photograph, the more you know about what goes on in that location, the better off you will be in positioning yourself where you want to be, right? Note safe and quiet places where you can set up without disturbing the birds, right? If you've noticed that, I don't know, an eastern phoebe or whatever kind of bird you're looking to photograph goes so from this perch to that perch to that perch to that perch, you might not want to set up right in between because you may have disturbed what it was doing. But maybe if you stay here, well, then you know it goes to all of those. And so you can use your knowledge of the area to know where to position yourself. Check for places with lots of human activity or noise sources. I can't tell you how many times I've been set up for a really good photo and lost it because a dog barked, a truck went by, kids, whatever it is, life happens, especially here in New York City. It's difficult to get certain photos, but if you can be aware of that and use that to your advantage, or maybe find a quieter location, or if certain locations the sound picks up in the afternoon, we'll get there in the morning. There are things like that you can do. Again, that don't necessarily come to mind as fieldcraft, as don't just scare the birds, but when you know the location, you're prepared with the right gear, you're prepared with the knowing how to use it, it allows you to pay a lot more attention on getting the photo you need, positioning yourself in the right way, as opposed to just flying by chance and hoping you have it all right. And pay attention to wind direction, sun angles, all that sort of stuff. We're going to get into sun angles. But again, the more you know about a location, if you're looking for a spot with golden sun and it doesn't get any golden sun, well, you got a problem, right? I use an app called Photo Pills. I use it all the time. It can tell you where the sun's going to be. When I go to a new location, I just take out the app and I look around and see where the sun's going to rise and where the sun's going to set. And that can tell me if I'm going to get golden sun or not, or exactly what time I need to be done where I'm going to lose the light. I'm going to show photos from a workshop I run in Utah where I use it all the time because there's lots of mountains. And so it makes a huge difference if the sun's going to set in the lower mountain as opposed to one of the peaks. You may have an extra 45 minutes of sun or not. So knowing about the sun, knowing about the location is way more important than people think about it. I think fieldcraft, again, I'll keep saying it. Don't scare the birds, or how do I approach? But it's a lot more complicated because there's all these other things that can mess up your photo. So getting a little more into the actual fieldcraft portion, what people generally think is, don't wear bright pink neon colors. Wear something neutral. Camouflage might help some of the time. Moving slowly. Sudden movements tend to scare birds a lot more than anything else. Sounds tend to scare birds a lot more than anything else. We were up on the top of a mountain in Utah last year. And black rosy finches were flying around, and people were really concerned that we were too close to them. Someone actually came up to me and said, I think you're too close. And then one came and landed on my head. And I was like, well, listen, black rosy finches don't really care about people. But when a car drove by, they all flew immediately. So just with regards to blending in, wearing things like muted colors, natural colors, camouflage, avoiding noisy or shiny clothing makes a big difference. We were sitting in a blind this year in Arizona, and someone had on a really, I don't know what kind of jacket it was, but it made a lot of noise. It kept scaring the birds, right? You've got to wear something that's, if you're going to sit in the blind and you're around birds that are very skittish, they don't want to hear that noise. So something that's quiet is very important. Moving slowly and deliberately is sort of very obvious, but I'm going to state it again. Slow stopping, watching what the birds are doing. I'm going to get into more details about that, but slow, deliberate movements is vital with almost all wildlife, especially birds. And using camouflage or hides, I'm going to talk about that more as well, but a great way to get close to birds is if you can sit in a blind. People might have a problem in Central Park if you're sitting in a blind. In other places, it's not a problem at all. So we've gone over a bunch of steps already. We've gone over knowing the camera, how it can help you in the field. We've gone over knowing the location. We've gone over being able to use the camera, what you're wearing, knowing what is going to happen with the light. And now let's talk about working with the light. Position yourself with the sun at your back, obviously, if that's the kind of shot you want, or if you want a side-lit shot, or a backlit shot with the sun in your face. So how do you use working with the light with your fieldcraft? Shoot during goldening hours. I prefer most of my shots to be early in the morning or late in the evening. I don't shoot ever if the sun's high in the sky. If it's overcast, then I will shoot then. But again, if I'm talking about fieldcraft, well, if I want a shot at sunrise, well, I need to be someplace well before sunrise so I can be in position where I want to be, where I know the sun's going to be at my back, right? So talking about positioning. Position yourself with the sun at your back or directly in your face. You may only get one chance to approach a bird, right? If you're looking for a shot with the sun at your back, well, then don't approach it from the other direction, right? Pretty simple, but we all make mistakes. It's all easy to just sort of take the straight line to something and wind up being on the wrong side of the sun. And now by the time you have to work your way around, you have a problem. I always avoid harsh midday sun. I don't shoot in it. I don't like to look at the photos. I don't like the heavy shadows on the birds. I don't like the blown highlights. I just avoid it. I do use things like when the sun gets a little bit higher in the sky in the morning, or it's a little bit higher in the evening before it goes down. That's when we'll shoot flight shots, especially on the trips, when you can get a little more shutter speed. I'm not talking about super high, but when it's high enough where you can get the kind of shutter speed that you're looking for. If you're looking to photograph shorebirds that are really fast and small, some of them in flight or things like that, you need more shutter speed without cranking your ISO through the roof. And I would just say, with regards to light, adjust your exposure and your settings and things like that to get the kind of photo you're after. But it's all encompassing, right? It's where did you position yourself? Why did you position yourself there? How did you approach slowly? What did you know about the location? And use all of that to approach the birds. People don't generally associate that sort of stuff with Fieldcraft because they just sort of think, oh, well, how did I get from here to there and not scare the bird? But if you didn't know to be here, you wouldn't know to get there, right? So it's a lot more to do than that. And I'm planning workshops or I'm going to photograph a certain bird. I do a lot of research, right? I don't just randomly happen upon stuff. I know where I'm going. I know why I'm going there. I know the time of day I'm going there. And it really helps in not scaring things. It helps in getting more photos than not. So now let's just go over some photos and what did we do? And why did we do them? And how did we approach the birds? So all of these photos are from 3 different workshops, and they're just a selection of them. A workshop I ran in Arizona in April, a workshop I ran in Utah in May, and a workshop I ran in Newfoundland just last month in July. Okay, so this is a pair of crested caracaras. It's sort of difficult to see, but they're sitting over their nest. They have a nest there with 2 young caracaras in it. It's right as the sun was setting. So in this location, the sun rises in the opposite direction where it would sort of go directly onto that side of the saguaro in the morning, and then it goes all the way around, and so in the evening it's on that side. If you don't know that, well, you got a problem, right? If you don't know where the sun is going to rise or set in this location, you just show up, you'd have an issue. If you want a frontlit shot of these crested caracaras and you show up in the evening, you're not getting it, right? There's a big barbed wire, fence in between where the road is and where this bird nest is. And so just simple knowledge of the location. Parking the car, going slowly. These caracaras are fairly used to people, so they're not so difficult to approach. But knowing the location and the type of photo that you're after will dictate how you're approaching them, either in the morning or the evening, where you're going, what lens you're using. In this case, I was using the 300 2.8. I was using this lens, shot vertically. Okay. All right, next, killdeer. This is photographed at sunrise in Utah. There's a location that I will get into more detail later, some other ways how we approach the birds here. But it's a really quiet marsh. It's in a location that you have to be a local resident to get into. I have friends that get me into this location that we bring people in. It's one of the best places I know of in Utah. And it has a lot of marsh birds that nest in there and are in there. It gets beautiful early morning sun. There are mountains in the background that reflect pink as the sun's coming up, and I'm going to show that. In this case, we're actually laying down under cover. I'm going to describe that more later. And the birds are just going around doing what they were doing. In this case, a white-faced ibis was about to land. It was landing right near this bird, and it just sort of was getting startled and flying away. So we're laying down in mud in the morning, sun at our back as the sun's coming up. We got in position before sunrise, and that's how you get this sort of shot. So there's an Atlantic puffin photographed in Newfoundland just last month, again at well before sunrise. You've got to know location, right? Things like, well, if I go to these cliffs, where's the sun going to be? Is the sun, if I want this sort of shot, can I get it in the morning? Can I get it in the evening? Where can I get color? Where do I position myself? How do I get close enough to not scare these guys? Now, it turns out most puffins in this location are pretty tame. They're pretty easy to approach. Some of them weren't, so you really have to pay attention to each bird. In this case, I was just using the 600. I wasn't all that close to it. I didn't really need to be. I was lying right on the edge of a cliff. It looks like that's where I was, and that's where I actually was. 2 inches to the left, and someone else is giving this talk. So I knew the location. I paid attention to the forecast. It's supposed to be a sunny morning. I made sure I was there, right? I know you can get these sort of pinks and these sort of tones. I approached slowly enough. I know this is a spot where on those cliffs that those birds land often, and it's the very edge there, so I could not just get them standing on a cliff, but I could also get the rock face in front of it as well. That's the sort of shot I wanted. That's the sort of shot we all got on the trip. This is well, it looks a little distorted, but doesn't look that on here. American avocet at the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Again, knowing about these birds, the avocets are fairly easy to approach. However, the Salt Lake is not easy to deal with because it's extremely muddy and you can sink right in it. So you have to know where you can approach these birds. You have to know how close you can get. And you have to know how not to sink in. And by sink in, I mean you sink in. Like I've taken the wrong step and been up to my waist in mud and, had to be pulled out of this place. So it can be very, kind of like the East Pond at Jamaica Bay, can be very treacherous. So you have to know how you can solely approach these birds. You have to know which locations. The mud's a little bit harder. You can actually get near them. In this case, this is pre-dawn. This is before the sun came up. And so working the light, I made sure we're in this location where the avocets hang out, wanting to get them in between that little valley of the two mountain ranges that are in the background. So we positioned ourselves right in that spot. So this is the same location as the killdeer, also pre-dawn. This is, we slowly approached before the sun came up. I had the whole group under cover. I'll explain more about that again, but that's actually not the moon or the sun. That's the little circle in the background. Bokeh ball is the light from a factory in the background. So we wanted to use that in the photo, right? So we positioned ourselves where we knew black-necked stilts would be going back and forth. We positioned ourselves where we knew that we can get some of those bokeh balls from the lights in the background. Didn't scare the birds, right? You have to be in the location. You have to be there well before the sun comes up in order to get these sort of shots. Otherwise, if you just walk up at sunrise, they're just going to fly away and they're not coming back. And this is the spot where these birds like to feed, right? So the important part of the Fieldcraft isn't how you approach necessarily, it's when you approached, right? Because if you get there in the dark and you're not really bothering them as you get into position, then once you're there and you're under cover, they don't pay you any mind. If you walked up a half an hour later, you'd have a big problem. So this is more about when I approached as opposed to how or why I approached there. So black-legged kittiwake, photographed on some cliffs in Newfoundland. Again, working the light. In this case, we're working with the sun reflecting off of the ocean below. If you do certain things like really stop down here, F13, you can get these crazy bokeh balls and reflect, from the reflections of the sun on the ocean below. We're up about 300 feet on the cliff. Kittiwakes nest on those cliffs. There's young kittiwakes all around you. You can practically reach out and touch them. The same cliffs have thousands of northern gannets. I think I'll show a couple of gannet photos. But again, this type of photo was only possible there in the evening, on a sunny evening, if you want these sort of bokeh balls in the background. And you have to know exactly when you can start shooting them. So the Fieldcraft portion is a lot less about, you can't really scare these birds because they nest right there and they're super tame and they're super easy to approach. But you have to know how to get that type of photo. You have to know exactly what time to get that photo. So knowing how to work with the light tells you how to position yourself. So here's a very similar type photo, Atlantic puffin on a nearby cliff from the puffin I showed in pink. This is later in the morning, but the same type of thing. You can't get these photos in this place in the evening if you want all these types of bokeh balls in the background. Again, I'm at f13, which really helps to get these types of photos. He's holding nesting material. The puffins go onto the cliffs, and they walk around, and they pull up flowers, and they pull up little grasses and things like that, and they use them to line their nests. And for whatever reason, all these seabirds spend a lot of time sort of flapping their wings when they're landed. So I knew that. I made sure I had enough shutter speed. You wouldn't think, well, why do I need that much shutter speed to photograph a puffin that's just standing there? Well, the reason is because I wanted to get a nice sharp wing flap shot shortly after sunrise. So all those bokeh balls are everyone positioning themselves. One, not to scare the bird. Two, to be right on the edge of where the sun is reflecting off the ocean in order to be able to get a shot like this. This is a little bit later in the morning, very, very close to where the other shot was, also Atlantic puffins in Newfoundland, also positioning ourselves pretty much right at the edge, but a different time, right? 15 minutes later, you lost all that golden color. And all you had was all of these bokeh balls reflecting off of the water. I mean, if you're looking directly into the sun in this case, and there's a big reflection of sun coming, on the water, on the edges of that sun, there's some speckling. And if you drop down and you're fairly close to a bird, again, that was shot using this 600 millimeter right here, very tiny crop. That's what it looks like. So it's not just about not scaring the birds, it's about how you position yourself in the field to get the kind of shot that you're after, right? Knowing exactly where to position yourself on the edge of the reflection of the sun, knowing how not to scare the puffin, right? Knowing, in this case, to wait for the puffin to do something. Puffins, when they're, I know I show another one of these photos later on, they open their mouths wide when they're going to do like a mating dance. And this one was sort of calling to another one, and they went over, and eventually they started doing this dance, and they sort of play with their beaks. So as the sun gets a little bit higher in the sky, like I mentioned before, there's another location that we visit in Newfoundland where the birds constantly fly by. Puffins, black guillemots, razorbills once in a while, black-legged kittiwakes, just streams of them, nonstop, over and over and over again. So if you don't know where that's going to happen, well, it's very hard to find. You have to know in those spots exactly where to sit. You have to know in those spots exactly where to get the sun at your back. You have to know how to position yourself close enough. You have to know about the wind. In this case, the wind was coming in the direction where they were flying into the wind, and they were going a little bit slower. Now, you can't always predict that they're going to fight midair like this, and one puffin's going to grab the other person's neck, and I have a whole string of photos of that. But what you can do is be ready. We positioned ourselves in the right place. We were close enough where there was a whole group of puffins, maybe 200 that were landed as close as I am to the back door right there. And they were just flying by and coming into land right next to us. They're used to our presence, had no problem with us. And so some of them just kept going. Some of them were coming down and landing and flying by. Some of them were fighting midair. Funny enough, this was actually the first photo I took. We spent about an hour where there were so many puffins were just nonstop doing this, no break. There was hundreds or thousands of them coming by. After an hour, I literally could not hold it anymore, the camera. So I put that down. I picked up my 300 millimeter to put the 2X on it. I had it with me, talking about Fieldcraft. I didn't have to get up. I didn't have to walk away. I had it in my bag right next to me. I picked it up, and the first shots that I got was this. Well, there was maybe 5 or 6 before that. But this, string of photos, because I had this lens with me. Right? I was too tired to hold the 600 anymore. I had this with me and set up, anticipating that if the kind of action happens that I think is going to happen. And then I was able to get a whole other string of shots as well, because this is smaller and lighter. So again, Fieldcraft is about a lot more than just how you approach the birds. In this case, it's about where we set up. It's about what I had with me, right? I had extra batteries with me, I had an extra camera with me, I had a lighter lens with me that I could actually continue to hold once my shoulder just couldn't hold that one after an hour. So this is the northern gannet. That is, actually, we're about 10 feet away from where that kittiwake that was flying with the bokeh balls in the background. I kept watching this rock. The gannets nest from there down. There are thousands. I don't know how many thousands. 20,000. I have no idea how many thousands. It's more than you can imagine that nests in this area. And I kept looking for one to come and display on this rock. So for 3 days we were there, and for 2 days, and this was our last evening there, none landed there. Not one bird landed on this rock. This rock was the rock I wanted them to land on the entire time, and one bird came and landed on that rock. And not only did it land on that rock right at sunset, where the sun's coming from behind, and you just get these cliffs beautifully lit up in gold, but then it started to display. And so Fieldcraft is a lot about paying attention, right? Again, these birds are not scared of you. They will fly 2 inches over your head. You can take an iPhone and get a full frame shot of a northern gannet at this location. So you're not necessarily worried about scaring these birds, but paying attention to what they do, to where they do it, to why you think they do it, so you can anticipate what's going on, and so you can anticipate the kind of photo that you're looking to get and be in position to get it. So I was staring at this rock over and over, and there are thousands of these gannets flying around, so you can get any photo you want. And it's very easy to be distracted by thousands of gannets. And this is not an exaggeration, it's thousands of them. They're just swirling, they're everywhere. But I kept just staring at that rock because I knew I wanted one on that rock. So part of Fieldcraft is about really just paying attention, right? Paying attention to what's happening in all of the madness. I mean, there are how many tens of thousands of gannets there? There's kittiwakes, there's common murres all around. And so being able to look through all of that and stay focused on what you're trying to do is a vital part of Fieldcraft. So step 6, we just went through working with the light. These were all about how we positioned ourselves and why, either sunrise, sunset, working with the bokeh balls off the ocean, or pre-dawn shots. Step 6 is using natural or man-made cover, trees, bushes, grasses, blinds. All those things provide a sense of safety for the birds. So let's go over some key details of these. Conceal yourself in bushes, trees, or grasses. And I'm going to show you examples of all these things. A great way to not scare birds is to be hidden, right? Use terrain features like rocks or dips to stay out of sight. Pretty basic. Stay in a man-made or pop-up blind. Makes a big difference. There's lots of birds that are very skittish, that if you're sitting in a blind and they're coming towards you, you can get photos that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. You can build a temporary blind, and I'm going to show you examples of all these things. You can use your car as a blind. And in all of those situations, staying still and quiet really helps avoid detection, really helps not scaring the birds. So here's a case where, sorry, the colors are just throwing me. Here's a case where in a car, in my Utah workshop, we visited a sharp-tailed grouse lek, and there were maybe 30 or 40 sharp-tailed grouse that were never been to a grouse lek. The males are calling and dancing, and they stomp their feet really fast. and they sort of performing for the females that come into the grouse leks as well, and they all sort of battling. In this case, there was a sheep herder with some dogs, and the dog came by and scared the birds. So if you as much as cough, they fly away immediately. They're very skittish birds, but they're used to cars in this location, okay? Because no one gets out of their car at this location. And so they're fine if you drive up in your car well before the sun comes up. You wait for the sun to come up, and they come out and they start dancing. So this is just a fun photo because it was one of the grouse looking towards me and two of the grouse flying away as this herding dog walked by. This is a greater sage grouse. Mind the colors. Also in Utah, we visited another location where you can sit in your car. The sage grouse lek all over the place. They go on a road. They're on the side of the road. If you've never been to a grouse lek, I recommend going to a greater sage grouse lek first. Grouse. No, grouse lek? Lek, yeah, it's where they dance. All the males get together, and it's L-E-K, that's how it's spelled. And in this particular lek, you get about 75 to 100 birds, where they sort of blow up those air sacs, and they make this really crazy sound, which I'm not going to try to do. But check out on YouTube, greater sage grouse, and they blow up this sac, and they make all these crazy sounds, and the males will sort of spin in circles and display. And the females will come, and then the males sort of, they get attracted. Whoever dances the best or blows the sack up the best gets the female, I guess. But we use the car as a blind. Again, in this location, the birds are very used to people. I watched one person get out of their car. They all flew away immediately. I was there on a different day where I was in position, and a golden eagle flew over. They all flew away immediately. And so a lot of these things are very, there's a fine line between getting the shot and not getting the shot. When a raptor comes over, go home. In this case, I guess raptors like eating sage grouse because they were gone immediately and never came back. But we use the car as a blind, so it allows you to drive right up to them, allows you to shoot just right out the window. They don't mind you at all. You can even sort of hang out the window a little bit. They didn't seem to mind. When you open the car door, they're gone. I run a workshop in Arizona for a bunch of the desert birds, and we sit in the blind a lot of the time. Many reasons, one of which is rattlesnakes. There's a lot of rattlesnakes in the area. Everything in southeastern Arizona either wants to stick you, bite you, stab you, poke you. It's all thorns. It's all, bugs, snakes, scorpions, all that sort of thing. So I don't really like bringing people out into all of that. Also, a lot of the area is private property and it's barbed wire fences. So there are locations that you can access a lot of the birds and not really get access to too many of the potential problems, right? So in this case, we're sitting in a pop-up blind. And this is a Kerbal thrasher photographed there. The birds are used to blinds in this location. They don't mind. They come right in. And so we're going to show you a few species of birds that we photographed in these same blinds, one of which is this Kerbal thrasher. So again, the Fieldcraft is, if you were just standing there out in the open, these birds are not coming in, right? Getting there before the sun went up, or well before, and putting the blind up a few hours before you wanted to start shooting and sitting in that blind, the birds are comfortable with the blind. You've eventually just blended into the environment, and you can get the photos. Here's a Perloxia photographed at sunset, also in those blinds, sitting on an Ocotillo plant. That's kind of cactus they have out there. Again, working with the light. I hadn't been to this location in a couple of years, and I met someone there who I hadn't actually met in many years, and he started talking to me. And the second he started talking, I said, "I'm sorry, hold on." And I took out that app that I was sending you, Photo Pills. He must have thought it was weird because I just took my phone out and I went like this. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm seeing where the sun's setting." And where the sun was setting in this location is right through these trees, where if you shoot through them in the evening, At sunset, you get all those crazy bokeh balls in the background, which is the kind of shots we were after. So knowing where to set up the blind, knowing where the sun was setting, right? Knowing, in this case, how to get birds to sit in that location as well is all part of the Fieldcraft. We blended in, we set up exactly where we needed to be. So in this case, because the sun is actually setting through these mesquite trees, right? So if you were 2 feet left or 2 feet right, your background would be completely different. Either be completely blown out sun in one spot, or it would just be dark, nothing in another spot. You literally had to be within a foot or two, and that foot constantly changed as the sun was moving and setting. Another photo from the same blinds. It's a hooded oriole. Use the blinds as a way to hide. The birds come in the open. When you're there at the right time and you know what to do and you know how to do it, the Fieldcraft is positioning yourself in a place where they're going to be and you're not bothering them. Once that blind is there, you've disappeared, and the birds go about their business. It's an orange crown warbler, photographed in the same blinds on a Palo Verde tree. So I'm not going to spend too much time on all of these. This is a Gambel's quail, same blind, same place in Arizona. Some of the shots are in the morning, some of the shots are in the evening. In this case, I don't know what kind of berry that is, but the quails are coming up and they're eating the berries. What'd you say? Pyracantha. Is that what it is, Pyracantha? Yeah. So the Fieldcraft is, and I know I keep saying this because when most people talk about Fieldcraft, they just like, well, how do I get from here to there and not scare the bird, right? But everything we do in the field is Fieldcraft, right? From what gear we have with us to how we move about the field to where we positioned ourselves at sunrise or sunset or the middle of the day to what types of photos we're after, whether we're in a blind or not in a blind. That's all Fieldcraft, right? So there's another shot from those blinds. It's a Lucy's warbler, photographed as it was feeding an ocotillo at sunset. Same thing. You had to position yourself. You had a few inches where you could position yourself. In this case, everyone in the blind actually took turns shooting at this point. You take a shot, move it along. Next person took a shot, move it along. Because you only have a small area where you can angle to get that exact kind of background with all those crazy colors and things like that. I think this is the last shot I'm showing there. This is also from Arizona. That's a male Perloxia. This tree's got a million different names. Sweet acacia, things is what they call it out there. Also photographed in these blinds. And you got to know how to get them in there. You have to know how to be there. You have to know how to be silent when they're there, because if you cough, they're gone, right? If you're unzipping your bag and doing whatever, they're gone. You have to be in that blind and silent. This is a photograph from Utah, from the Great Salt Lake in Eared Grebe, right at sunset. There's one spot along Causeway at the Antelope Island at the Great Salt Lake that the Eared Grebes hang out. And there can be, a friend of mine messaged me one time and he said, oh, do you see any eared grebes? And I said, I think I see all the eared grebes. 90% of the world's eared grebes stay on the Great Salt Lake. And they were pretty much all there. There's tens of thousands of eared grebes that go there, but very often they're very far out. So part of the Fieldcraft with these is knowing when they come close, right? And knowing how to sometimes get them close. In this case, if you're looking for a backlit photo, well, you can only do that in the evening, pointing in one direction. In the morning, you cannot get a photo like this because there's tall mountains in the other direction. It's not even possible. By the time the sun peaks over those mountains, there's no golden light, there's no anything. So it's, in this case, the grebes can be very, very tame. I've had them 2 feet from me, but they could also be 3 miles away. And so you have to know where they're going to be, when they're going to be there, and how they're going to be there. Here's a pair of western grebes from a different location in Utah, where we use, for the eared grebes, we're laying in the rocks. And for these western grebes, we're sitting in Phragmites. So the whole group is sitting on the edge of this, I don't know if that's a river, I'm not sure what that is. It's a wetland area, very sort of moving water, but not so fast. Freshwater marsh on one side, but it moves fast on the other side. And western and Clark's grebes nest in that location. And early in the morning, you get this amazing golden light. And the location changes from year to year because they do controlled burns in this location, and so they burn the Phragmites, and the reflection of that gold is actually just Phragmites in the background. And so you have to know where to try to get this sort of shot from year to year, because from year to year it can change. But this is a male and female, male on the right, female on the left, that were swimming right towards us. They were doing other things that grebes do, rushing, where they get up on the water and they sort of dance together. But again, we're sitting in the grass, hiding, right? The birds, once we positioned ourselves in that grass before the sun came up, they didn't mind us. They swam right towards us multiple times. So we used natural stuff that was in the area to blend in. This is a cinnamon teal. Can be very skittish in Utah. They are hunted out there, and well, that's more of a bright purple teal. That's just more of a cinnamon teal. They are hunted out there. It can be very skittish. So what we do is we get to this location. It's the same spot we were for that killdeer that had its wings up. The location is great. It's got really shallow, super calm water, and you get these amazing reflections. So we all lay down on yoga mats, and I cover everyone up with grass, like a tiki hut grass, cover everyone up with that, so we're just completely hidden. You're in that before the sun comes up, and then the birds just sort of come and go about their business. So this is cinnamon teal, just sort of sitting right in front of us, full frame shot, not cropped, not anything. They're really difficult birds to get close to out there, but the natural cover, getting there early in the morning, knowing where to be to get the sun at your back, makes all the difference. That's blue-winged teal, so same sort of thing. Within 10 feet of where the cinnamon teal was, also a pretty cool shot because you just get beautiful grasses in the background, amazing mirror-like reflection at this location. We're there before sunrise. We're in waders. We're laying in the water. We're covered up in grass. We did all that knowing that the birds were there, so knowledge of the area, all the things we've gone over, go into each photo. Same location, American avocets. After avocets mate, well, first of all, they go through a whole ritual where the female sort of puts her head down, and the male will go on either side of her and splash water. And so if you know that, then you know to anticipate what's coming next, which is they're going to mate. And then after they mate, you know what to anticipate, which is they're going to do, they run together. They sort of this tandem running. And so I saw the female sort of get into the position, told the whole group, hey, these birds are about to mate, get ready. That means they're going to mate, they're going to dance afterwards. So you have to have enough shutter speed for this sort of thing to happen. Again, we're laying in waders in the mud, covered up in grass. The birds are going about their natural behavior, completely unbothered by us. These are black-necked stilts. Within 3-4 feet of where the avocets were dancing, the black-necked stilts have a different dance. They have a different pre-mating ritual, and then after they mate, they dance like this. And of course, we have a whole string of shots of them dancing as well. But this location, knowledge of the location, I don't know any place else in Utah or anywhere for that matter where you get these kinds of backgrounds, that sort of mirror-like reflection, this diversity of species and all these crazy kinds of reflections and things like that. That's from a lot of scouting and knowing the locations. That's from knowing how to be there. That's for setting up well before the sun comes up, hiding under grass, and letting the birds go about their natural activity. In this case, mating, dancing, all that stuff. So the last step is patience, right? We've talked about all sorts of other things, light and knowing locations and knowing everything else. Being patient, being still for long periods of times, letting the birds come to you rather than you chasing them makes a big difference, not just for birds, but all wildlife for that matter, right? So we'll just go over some bullet points and get into some final photos. Find a good spot and settle in. Now, that doesn't always work, but it helps a lot. Finding a nice quiet spot where you can just blend into the environment and wait for stuff to happen. That's what happened all those last photos that I showed you. We settled in, we were quiet, and multiple species of birds were mating in front of us, multiple species of very skittish ducks were sitting right in front of us, killdeers were walking around, and so we were quiet and silent and patient. Stay silent whenever possible. That's one of the hardest things when leading trips, because people, I have to answer questions, and I try and beforehand be as informative as possible. But if I need to whisper a little bit here and there, or announce, oh, those avocets are about to make, get ready, I try to say it as quietly as possible. But the quieter you can be, the better. Now, not every bird cares. You walk around the streets, pigeons don't care if you're quiet, right? Some birds do. A lot of birds really do. Limiting your movement. That goes back to the beginning, where if you're looking at a menu and going, oh, well, what's that again? Or you can scare things. So being as quiet and still as possible. If you do need to move forward, like you do a lot of times, doing it low, doing it slow. I crawl a lot, whether I'm on the beach or whatever it is. Not everyone is physically able to crawl and hold their gear. However you're moving, doing it as slowly and deliberately as possible. Pretty much all nature doesn't like loud sounds and fast movements. And so slow and deliberate matters a lot. If you need to calm yourself down, take deep breaths, things like that, so you can stay still, right? And it's more of the same. Just move slowly to get into the position, let the birds be used to your presence, and stay still for long periods of time. So this is on the same cliff as the northern gannet's nest. These are two common murres. In this case, I was watching for a while on a few mornings, and the common murres were landing there. And one of the times I saw them, the common murres, very similar to puffins, do a thing where, as sort of a mating ritual, the two of them face each other and they sort of knock their beaks together. So just waited for that to happen again. Waited in position. They had all these sort of flowers in front of them, and in this case, it was a waiting game. Sometimes you lose that game. Sometimes you wait and they don't do what you want. But in this case, we already had millions of photos of all the other things, and what we wanted were two common murres doing this. So it was just a matter of waiting. This is a willow ptarmigan. These birds require a lot of patience, not necessarily because they're skittish. Once you see them, they don't really care, but they're really hard to find. Willow ptarmigans just blend into the environment. These are photographed in Newfoundland, actually on the way out to where the gannets are, and they just are, well, this is a male willow ptarmigan, but they're remarkably good at blending into that grass and disappearing. Because the grass, in this case, the male is sort of standing up tall. There was a family of 7 of them, the male and female, and 5 babies. And he was just sort of looking, giving us the whole "don't go near my baby" look. But when they just sort of hunker down and go in the grass, they're gone. And there's just miles of this grass out there. So you need patience to find them. You can happen upon them by luck. Or you can really look and really pay attention. I don't know if you've ever seen ptarmigans in the winter. They turn white, like snow. They just turn completely white. Also, you need patience. The patience is just finding them things. Once you find them, they don't much care about you, but you need patience to find them. So this is an Atlantic puffin walking around on some of those cliffs, very close to where some of the other things were, but pointing in a separate direction. This photo was taken in the evening. I showed a photo of a puffin where there was bokeh balls in the background. It had its wings out and had nesting material. I kept waiting for them to pull prettier flowers, because a lot of the times they were just sort of pulling this brown grass, or they would pull like a little something flower. I wanted prettier flowers. Right behind where we were, there was all this beautiful little alpine tundra kind of flowers and stuff. Well, I don't know where this guy got this one from because he flew in, but he paraded back and forth. We got millions of photos of this puffin. He went left and right and back and forth, and he had he had the root, he had the whole thing. I don't know how long it took him to tug that out, but he got it out and he paraded around, showing all his buddies, showing the women, whatever he did, check out the flower I got. And that was a waiting game, because we watched them pull stuff over and over again. I had lots of photos of them with grass in their mouth or just pulling other little things. This was like he got a big, long plant, and he got the whole thing. And that was just a waiting game. Now, you can wait all that time and not get the photo, of course. This stuff happens. But in this case, we waited and were ready, to get the shot that we were after. So this is a razorbill. The razorbills there's not nearly as many, and they don't come out in the open as often. The razorbills, unlike the puffins nest in burrows, so they will go onto the tops of rocky islands where there's like moss and dirt, and they nest inside there, or they'll come to the cliffs. Razorbills nest only on cliff edges. So they don't really have any need to come to where we are, because they nest on the big rock faces. But once in a while, you get lucky. So we were sitting in a location where there was maybe 20 or so puffins that were coming and landing, and this razorbill just came and landed right in front of us, flapped its wings a bit, took off. So they're not super scared of you once they're around, but it's a waiting game, because for every puffin, maybe for every 1,000 puffins, there's 2 or 3 razorbills in this location. There's just not as many. And when they are there, they stay on the cliffs. So you can see them flying below you, or 200 feet away sitting on the cliffs. They just don't come close enough. Or in this case, I shot that, with this lens and a 1.4 converter, so 420 millimeters, very close. We were just sitting there quietly, sort of landed, maybe 15 feet from us, flapped its wings, sat around for a while, took off. This is a common murre, same sort of thing. Where the puffins nest, there are common murres, but maybe for every 100 puffins, there's 1 common murre. There are, in the Northeast Atlantic, subspecies of common murres. They call them bridled murres, but the same, just common murres. They have that white eye line thing. So a lot of people, when they go there, they want to get that subspecies of common murre, because the rest of them don't have the little eyeglass spectacle thing. So it's a waiting game. They just don't come in as often because there aren't nearly as many of them. So in this case, we were just quietly sitting in a location where the puffins were coming and landing. And along came one of the common murres who sat there, and in this case, it had just landed, was sort of getting its balance. I eventually have photos of it taking off and coming in and landing as well. We got all of it. So paying attention, knowing what's going on around you, finding locations where you know that they come and do this sort of thing, and then patiently waiting. This is another Atlantic puffin that is just doing one of those wing flaps. In this case, used a 24-70. I think this was at about 40 millimeters or something like that. So basically, I had my camera right in the puffin's face, right? They just don't care about you. When you approach slowly, and now some of them care. Some of them you move the wrong way, they fly away immediately. There are others that were pretty clearly very tame, or that would come and land right next to you. They just didn't care. And for those birds, you can get more creative, right? For those birds, okay, well, if I lay down and I crawl up a little bit and, this isn't the 24-70, but I can just sort of hold this and just go like this right in the puffin's face. You can get some really cool shots. In this case, he was just sort of sitting there. I liked it because it was near the flowers, and did what a lot of the seabirds do. He flapped its wings a little bit, and to get a really sort of different shot. So not every puffin lets you do that. Not every time the same puffin will let you do that, right? However, patiently waiting for an opportunity for something a little bit interesting to happen, as opposed to just the puffin just sitting there, takes time. So one of the things I sort of rushed through that I wanted to make sure I mentioned, because we're just about done here, is when you're watching birds, it doesn't matter what the bird is, it's very important to let them get used to you. Right? If they're feeding and you're trying to approach them slowly, as soon as they stop feeding and get up and look at you, you stop. Don't move. Don't do whatever you're doing, because that's when they're going to fly. Right? Wait for them to continue doing whatever it is they're doing. If they're feeding, or if they're preening, or just swimming around, whatever it is, wait. And so it's something I do all the time. I just watch what the birds are doing. If they're sitting, in this case, if it's just puffing sitting around and you start, crawling towards them and all of a sudden they stand up and look alert, stop, right? There's a good chance they're going to fly. If they go about doing what they're doing, looking for flowers to pull up or looking for whatever, that's a good indication that they're now comfortable with your presence, and then you can slowly move forward again. And as soon as they stop again, you stop, right? And by doing that multiple times, you can get very close to a lot of things. Sometimes you push your luck and they fly away. Sometimes you sneeze and they fly away. It's nature. Sometimes things just happen and you don't know why it happened. But paying special attention to what exactly they're doing and letting them get used to you, being patient, right? And then proceed forward. It's not like, oh, there's the bird, I'm going to go, all right, well, he flew, right? He's feeding, I'm going to go up 2 feet, and then if he stops feeding and looks at me, well, then I'm not moving. And in most cases, I'm laying down, or I'm lying down, or I'm sitting, or whatever it is. I'm not moving until he goes back to feeding. Now the bird's comfortable with me, and then I'll slowly try to go a little bit closer. So it's a lot of patience, because there are times it could take you 20, 30 minutes to get within shooting distance of whatever the bird is that you're trying to shoot. So in this case, these are Atlantic puffins that are doing I don't know what the specific name for that is, but when they're doing their mating ritual, the males and the females, they sort of, smack their beaks together and they hold their mouth open and they make these sort of crazy puffin sounds. So knowing that they do that, being in position, in this case, right at sunrise, where you can get that sort of color in the background. I really wanted this sort of shot where we're sitting and waiting for this kind of shot, right? It was hope you get it when you have that 10 minutes of that kind of light as the sun is coming up. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But if you're paying attention to something over here or something over there, and don't have your eyes right on the birds that you think may start doing this, meaning a pair, right? If you're looking to get 2 birds that are doing a sort of a mating ritual and there's only one there, well, then either you're waiting for a second one to land or ignore those and watch the pair, right? Use your knowledge of what they're doing to help you get the photo. So just some final thoughts. Fieldcraft is about respect for the birds, the environment, and your own craft, right? Whatever kind of photo you're looking to get, well, if it's front lit, if it's back lit, if it's side lit, if it's golden sun or whatever it is, there's steps you have to take, right? You have to know. In my case, I try not to scare anything. Of course, it happens sometimes when we step out in nature. Things happen, but I'm not purposely ever flushing something. I'm not purposely trying to scare things. I'm not saying, oh, now I can scare to get a flight shot or anything like that. So I try to respect the birds. I try to limit my movements as much as possible. I try and limit where I'm moving, so I'm not trampling habitat or things like that. Of course, there's always some of that. You walk out in the marsh, you're probably stepping on some marsh grass, right? So to me, the point is to limit it, have everyone sort of take the same path in and out, so you're not trampling a lot more habitat. Being patient, I can talk about that for 10 years when it comes to bird photography. But watching, observing, understanding the landscape, understanding the birds, understanding how to approach them, understanding their movements, that's what leads to better photos. When the birds are used to you, when they act naturally, when they're mating, when they're dancing, when they're performing rituals and all those sorts of things. To me, those are the most memorable photos. It's a flight shot's nice, a standard portrait is nice, but when you could have 2 birds that are dancing or that are doing a mating ritual or something like that, or a whole family of birds or something, I connect to it more. I find them more interesting. And so the more we've blended in and the more natural the birds are acting, to me, that leads to better photos. At the same time, I would just say always be prepared and stay flexible, right? It is nature. You never know what's going to happen in front of you, and to go with the last thing, to keep learning from every outing, and every setting teaches you something new. Every time I go out, even though I've been out watching birds since I'm 52, since I was 3 or 4, my dad took me, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been outside. I always learn something new. There's always some other information that I can store in whatever file in my brain about all the species that I have photographed, or new ones, right? Oh, well, I know that in this situation, this bird did this. Let me store that away. So if I'm in that situation again, well, maybe I can get a little closer, or maybe I can not scare it the way it happened last time, or whatever it happens to be. Because it's nature, right? And we need to keep learning and keep getting ourselves in position to get better photos. So that's it. Thank you for attending. That's me. It's my phone number if anyone ever wants to reach out. My website is isaacgrantphotography.com. Easy one to remember. And my Instagram is @IsaacAGrant. I won't tell you what the A stands for. And that's it. Yeah.
Hey guys. Oh, here we go.
Hi. Thank you very much for that talk. And I just wanted to ask, say, situations like when you have snowy owls at Jones Beach and you've got a whole bunch of birders lined up, and you always get a few of them who just spook the bird by rushing ahead. Do you ever have any advice as to how you could maybe teach someone not to do that?
That's a terrible first question. That's a really good first question, but it's a terrible one for lots of reasons. Joking about it being terrible. So the problem with snowy owls, right, is that you just never know when one step is too much, right? Most people's intentions are not to flush them. It's to get a photo, right? But they think, oh, if I'm 1 foot closer or 1 foot further left and 1 foot further right, and eventually it's too much, right? And so especially when there's a lot of people around, things happen. I can tell you I have, a friend of mine found a snowy owl one time where he was looking through a scope and he turned around and there was an adult male snowy owl 3 feet from him. He didn't even know it was there. And he turned around, he took his cell phone, he took a picture, and he sent it to me. He was like, Isaac, get out here. Well, I went 5 times and didn't see it. Didn't see it at all. The 6th time I saw it about 300 feet away down the beach, and the second it saw me, it flew away. In between the 6th and the 7th time I eventually went, he was out on the same beach and once again was about 3 feet from it with a cell phone and took a picture of it. So you could think, oh, well, this bird's super tame because he's 3 feet from it with a cell phone. Or you could see it 300 feet away and think, oh, this is the most skittish bird you've ever seen, right? Same bird. There's only one adult male snowy owl anywhere in New York State at that time, right? The 7th time I eventually saw the bird, a dog chased it away. I never actually got a picture of the thing. What I would say to teach someone is, sometimes it's just luck, right? Sometimes it's bad luck. Sometimes you just take 1 step too much and they fly. Sometimes you don't know from day to day what mood that bird is in, right? Because twice this guy taunted me with cell phone pictures of an adult male all-white snowy owl, like full-frame cell phone pictures. And the 2 times I saw it, it got flushed by a dog or it flew 300 feet away. So just same bird, different days, different temperament. What I will tell you is stay away from the crowd. Snowy owls, like most other birds, follow patterns. Some of my best snowy owl photos have actually come from Jones Beach, and for me setting up 500 feet away from everyone else, because I know where the birds are going once they fly. And so I don't care what anyone else is doing. I know where they go. I know where they hunt in the evenings. I know every inch of those beaches because I've been on them my whole life. And so when they're over there sitting in a dune, it's irrelevant to me. I don't care about that photo. I'm not interested in that shot, and I'm not interested in the same photo that 500 people have gotten as well. So I go someplace else completely, knowing that that's where they're going, because I've seen them do it over and over again, and that's where the best photos come from. But what do you say to someone? I don't know. The long-winded answer is I really don't know, because their intentions probably weren't to scare them, right? And I've seen the same birds, snowy owls we have on Staten Island where I live, we have them sometimes. I've gone out to the beach sometimes and they were just, in fact, the first time the bird was found was at high tide and it was like very close and some guy was walking down the beach and I'm like, oh, he's gonna scare it. And the guy walked with his dog right by it and the bird didn't fly. Meanwhile, we were like crawling 75 feet away thinking, oh, we're not gonna scare it. The dude walked 10 feet from it, it didn't fly. I saw that same bird other days fly when people were 200 feet from it. Same bird, we only had one, right? So there's no real answer other than do your best for what you feel comfortable with, because that's probably what the other people are doing as well. That's how I approach it. And when I'm leading trips, I try to tell everyone that, hey, these are the tendencies these birds have. This is what I've seen them do. Let's hope they follow it today.
Thank you very much. Can you talk a little bit about backlight? Because I always try to avoid that because I don't know how to use that to get good pictures. That usually they're too bright, it's too shadows, like there's all sorts of issues around that.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, Fred, can you ask me something more specific or just a general, how do you take backlit photos?
Well, I guess, like I can give you an example. I saw a marsh wren, but the light was, in front of me, and there was no other way to go because
Understood.
I was on a little boardwalk, and there they were. And it was very tiny, and I got some okay shots, but it was backlit.
Yep.
And I really wasn't getting the shot I would have liked because I felt like the color of the birds were distorted by that. Yeah,
well, part of the answer to that is yes, the colors will be a little distorted because you'll get camera sensors, as good as they are, they're not as good as our eyes, right? So when we're looking into the sun, we see a bird with some shadows on it, right? But white still look white, but shadowed. Black still look black, but shadowed. Camera sensors, they'll come out orange or pink or whatever the color is. So some post-processing is needed to sort of get it right. The flip side of that is you won't get as much detail on the bird, right? Because you're shooting into the sun. I love those shots. I showed a bunch of them, right? I think if you can work with the sun, you can get very different photos, right? There's, for any species, there's probably 1,000 to 1 really good photos of it front lit to backlit. And so I always try and get, same with leading workshops, people as much diversity of species and photos as possible and teach them the techniques. But essentially, it changes all the time. I showed photos where there was all crazy bokeh balls coming off of the reflection of the sun in the ocean, right? I showed photos where it was just pink sky backlit shots before the sun came up. I showed photos where it was orange, like the last photos of the puffins, where that was before the sun came up, where the sky was just glowing orange. I showed photos out of Arizona where we were shooting as the sun was coming through the trees, the acacia or mesquite trees, whatever the hell they were. I was coming through those, and when it's in a certain spot, you get all those really pretty bokeh balls. So you've got to decide, like anything, whether you want a silhouette and very underexposed photo, or you want some details on the bird, or you want a lot of details on the bird. Because if you want a lot of details on the bird, well, then your background's going to become very bright, right? So you have to position yourself sort of perfectly where you're not overexposing it, right? Sometimes it's not possible. I will tell you, I've never seen a photo that's backlit with, perfect details on the bird and exposure in the background, because it doesn't exist, because you're looking into the shadows, right? You're looking at the dark side of the bird, so there's no reason it's going to look like a regular shot. But every inch matters, every centimeter matters in those shots, right? If you want shots where I could show millions of them, and if you look at my website, I have a section in the portfolio for backlit shots, and there's backlit shots up there, but shots where the birds are just sitting in the sun at sunset, or I try to just show what's possible. Of course, anything's possible, and you can do anything in any moment, but to give people just a range of these are the sorts of things you can get. Marsh wrens sitting on tops of phragmites or on cattails right at sunset with the sun setting behind it or something can be amazing, right? You're welcome. You just need to really think about the kind of shot you want beforehand, the type of exposure you want. Do you want just a shadow? Like those last puffins, I purposely underexposed that a lot in the field, right? I showed other puffins, the one puffin with the pink background on the edge of the cliff, where I had a lot more exposure on the bird because the sky was just turning pink as the sun was just coming up. It wasn't so bright out where I could just get more exposure on the bird and not really worry about blowing out the background. Say it again. It's not a matter of shutter speed, it's this total exposure. It's just how the three are, depending on your aperture and your ISO and your shutter speed. If you want backlit and flying, you need more shutter speed, right? The shutter speed's only important enough to get the bird sharp, and then how it relates to the other three. Some of those shots you saw was at f/13, like to get those bokeh balls, coming off the ocean, because it really exaggerates the little sun flare reflections and all those little things. Other ones I'm shooting wide open. It doesn't make any difference. It just depends on. It's very complicated because every situation is different. If you're shooting, through the sky, through phragmites, through trees, reflections off the ocean, it really matters a lot. But practicing it, going in those situations, seeing the type of exposure you like, knowing you're never going to get the same details as you would on a shot with the sun's at your back, and then you decide if it's for you or not.
Thank you. Let's go back to the attire. For camouflage, in some countries it's illegal to wear camouflage. So in those particular instances, would you recommend dressing for the brush or the dirt? Go with the green or a brown, or just stay all neutral?
Like everything, I'd say it all depends, right? I don't normally bother too much with what I'm wearing. I go on photographing this sort of things a lot. It's not like bright colors or anything like that. If it's a super skittish bird, I think they're more concerned about you're moving than what you're wearing, right? In general, I think it's a good rule, just in case it happens to be a bird that's really sensitive to color, wearing sort of earthy tones or blending into wherever you are. I mean, if you're in a marsh, wearing some sort of grassy colored things, or even if it's not camouflage, something you'll just sort of blend in. The whole point is with some things that are very skittish, is just sort of break up your shape a little bit, right? That's why we throw like tiki hut grass over, just to break up the shape, right? I mean, it doesn't look like grass really, although there is some grass on you. It's just really to break up your shape, and the birds just don't care. I mean, we've had cinnamon teals land 2 feet from us. And the cinnamon teals, if you blink the wrong way, they're gone 200 feet away. There are places you can drive around where they're used to cars. You open that car door, forget it, they're gone, because they're hunted. They don't play that game. So for some, it really depends bird to bird. I don't mean to give you an evasive answer, but there is no real answer. The general rule is play it safe on those sort of things. Wear something sort of neutral. And I think it's more important to just sort of break up the shape and be quiet and still than specifically what color you're blending into or anything like that, right? That's I mean, one of the problems with all this is, right, the birds don't tell you why they flew, right? You can just guess, right? Oh, well, the door slammed, well, that's why I think it flew. There are times you can make some real educated guesses. Sometimes they just fly, right? We don't really know. In general, neutral colors, I mean, I have, this lens coat thing on this. I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference, honestly. But I think it protects it more than anything else. I've been asked about these sort of things. If I'm walking through and it gets scratched, well, it loses more value than the, $75 that the lens coat or whatever this is cost me. This is a loaner lens. My lens is actually in the shop. That's why it doesn't have one on it. Mine actually has that on it. I don't think it really matters. I mean, I've seen lots of birds, but could it? Sure. There could be particular birds on particular days. They're like, oh, I don't like that big white thing. I'm out of here, right? We just don't know why, right? You just don't know. So you try to, sort of like I said at the end, make educated guesses, and it's okay, well, in these however many situations, this is the sort of thing that happened, and try to play the odds, right? Because it's hard enough to get in position. Certain things are easy, like certain things are super easy. There's some really hard birds to get close to. And what you don't want to do is finally get close enough, and then the bird's like, pink shirt, I'm out of here, There's no way to know, but maybe, right?
Be sure to check out isaacgrantphotography.com. He does lead a lot of tours, so instead of just in the corner of the store, you can be out on the field doing Fieldcraft with him live. So.
Yeah, it really does make a difference. This is not to get you to come one of my tours, but please, you're welcome. Although I only have a couple of openings for next year. Almost everything's sold out. But there are a lot of things that are just better learned in the field. I mean, that's the reality. And I did mention I do a lot of online coaching and things like that, and I'm trying to be very honest with people. There are things I can help you with a lot more behind a computer, things like Photoshop or Lightroom or certain techniques, and there's other things that are much better learned in the field. Hey, we're setting up right here as opposed to here, and this is why, right? Sort of things that may not be intuitive, or not everyone is fortunate enough to go to as many different locations as I go in a year, or be in front of however many hundreds of species in a year. And so, I can use that experience to help people in different ways.
Right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Isaac, again, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Get home safe, everybody.